What does Abbott Elementary, The Shy, Power, Yellow Jackets, and The Late Night Show all have in common? Their writers are on strike. Hey, what's up and hello? This is the Chris Nicole giving you my views on life, love, and the world of entertainment through my eyes. And I'm going to talk about the WGA strike, the 2023 WGA strike. I know a lot of you were actually curious about what this means and what does this represent. So I'm going to try to break it down based off of my research and my knowledge of the situation. We can definitely have a discussion below in the comment section if you definitely are privy to other things as far as what I'm going to say, and if you have some more insight on this situation, let's definitely chat about it in the comments. So let's start off with the basics. The WGA, which stands for the Writers Guild of America, it pretty much is a union that consists of writers who write for your favorite TV shows and movies. They also, pretty much represent writers in radio and online media, but we're going to focus on the TV and film writers today. So every 3 years, the industry unions, so for example, the Writers Guild of America, which we're talking about them, but also the Directors Guild, and SAG, which is the Screen Actors Guild for actors, every 3 years they have to renegotiate their contracts with the AMPTP, and that stands for the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers. So every 3 years they have to come up with new terms and they have to negotiate new terms. And if those new terms and conditions are not met, unions go on strike. So the last strike for WGA was in 2007, and it went until 2008. And it lasted for about 100 days, which is roughly about 3.5 months. So during those 3.5 months, just to give you an estimate of how costly these strikes can be, in the 3.5 months in California, just in California, okay, apparently the TV and film industry lost about $2 billion. Okay, $2 billion. So that should give you an example. Like, that's a lot of money in 3.5 months. So what happened between 2007, 2008 to now in 2023 where there is another strike? In short, streaming happened. Streaming, the Amazons, the Netflix, the Hulus, all of these apps that we watch our favorite shows and films on is what happened. So in 2007, 2008, streaming was not a big thing. It was just getting started, if barely really around at that time. So when the writers went on strike at that time, we didn't see a lot of streaming. What we saw was a lot of reality shows coming out when there was no scripted shows. So that's when I think the Kardashians and so many other reality shows came out. And I personally think that's why a lot of producers, if you really notice, you see a lot of producers, they don't really tap into the reality show world and the scripted television show world. Most people who are in reality TV unscripted, they stay there. And a lot of them, I think, prefer to stay there, not just because they like it, but because it's not union regulated, because it's not like you need a writer from the WGA. It's not like you need a professional actor from SAG. So it's a way where you can have just like regular smegular people. It's less cost for production, and yet they can still make a huge profit. So that's what happened in 2007, 2008. There was a lot of reality shows. And back then, it was still mainly, like I said, the broadcast networks and premium cable. Like, these streaming apps weren't really around. So when streaming started to creep into the industry, in my opinion, I think people at first thought it was a great thing because it was creating more scripted shows. The streaming world wanted to create scripted shows as well. So thus people thought it just meant more opportunities, more writers being able to get writing jobs. So I think in 2011, which was like the first negotiation after the strike, I don't think people saw streaming being a big issue yet. However, from my understanding, because you had 2011, the 2014 negotiations, because again, it's every 3 years. By 2017, there was a buzz in the industry from writers saying, something is not right. I'm not getting the same type of money. And a lot of people thought that the WGA was going to actually strike at that time, but I don't know what happened, and I couldn't find any research on what really happened, but they didn't strike, okay? And then in 2020, of course, 3 years later, we had the big C. So at that point, the world was scared. And Hollywood definitely shut down because, of course, we didn't have anything. We didn't know what was going on. So I think they were just like, look, we just want our people to work when we can get back to, filming and stuff again. We just want our people to work. So this situation has been boiling over for years, you guys, okay, for years. And this is the first time they could really put their foot down because, they didn't get a chance to really do it 3 years ago. So if you can imagine, the streaming world has almost had a 10-year advantage of being able to do kind of what they wanted to do without having the unions be able to put their foot down. They've been able to make huge profits, and I'm going to explain why. So, one thing, in the streaming world, there are a lot of shows that are not union protected shows, meaning you don't have to have a WGA writer who is union protected writing for that show. Now, as you know, with any job, not even in the entertainment industry, but any union job has its perks and benefits. Typically, union jobs mean better wages, a better work environment, better benefits. So with that, yes, you're working and you're doing what you love, but if you can compare what a union writer would get on the union show versus what a writer would get on a non-union show, there is a huge difference. Okay? Huge difference. So with that, that's first thing about streaming. Some of these shows are not union protected. So they can pretty much get anyone off the street to write a show. And for some people, they would just be happy with the wages, but in reality, it really isn't that much. So let's do a comparison, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a comparison instead of saying what's non-union versus union, even though I just gave that comparison. I want to give an easier comparison with union jobs. So a union job, say on the broadcast premium cable world versus a union job on the streaming world. So say you have two writers. One is writing, a WGA writer on a broadcast show. The other is a WGA writer on a streaming show. Okay. So first things first, as far as ownership of writing. If you write a book, for example, you pretty much obtain ownership of that book. If not all of it, definitely a good amount of it, most of it. That's how it works. You write a book, you keep your ownership. But in the TV and film world, you give up your rights to ownership. The trade-off is that at that point you're selling your show, you're selling your stuff, your script to the producer / studio. Now, you do that because for exchange of them owning the rights to your script, you are supposed to get a good amount of money, but mainly residuals. Okay? So, for example, the one writer that's on a primetime network and the other writer that's on a streaming network. I'm just going to make it even. Like I told you earlier, they do not get paid the same, but to make it easier, I'm just going to say they're going to make the same amount when they're in that writer's room writing for the show. So let's just say both of them come out after 6 months in the writer's room with their weekly fee, their script fee, all of the stuff that they get when they're in their writer's room. Let's just say both of them after 6 months make $100,000. Now hold on, because I know people are going to say $100,000, Chris Nicole, are you crazy? Most people don't even make that in a year. What the hell are they complaining for? Hold on, because in the entertainment industry, it's fickle. You're not guaranteed a job, okay? So you may have and come out of that job and have I would say 400,000. Hell no. But you may come out of that job and have $100,000. But it's not a guarantee you're going to continue to work. So that person who made $100,000 potentially may not work again for another year or more. Some people make that money and the show doesn't become a big hit and the show gets canceled, or they don't get invited back for the next season for whatever reason. These things like this in the industry happen. So you can think $100,000 in 6 months is a lot, but when you're thinking about the potential of maybe not having another job for quite some time, it really isn't that much, especially living in states like California and New York, where most of the writers are. Okay, stay with me. So both of them, again, streaming writer, primetime writer, both of them make that money coming out. Now, both of them are not working after that. It may take them another 2 years to get back into a writer's room. The difference is the writer that was on that broadcast show is going to get residuals. So, meaning, and this is just, again, I don't know if this is the exact amount, but I'm just giving you an example. This writer who was on that primetime show isn't working for 2 years can easily get maybe an additional $60,000 extra a year because they wrote on this show and they wrote scripts for this show. So anytime this show airs or whatever the case may be, they get a check. They can maybe get an additional $60,000 that first year, an additional $60,000 that second year. Now, with that, you can possibly stretch out your money and survive a little bit more with an extra $60,000 per year. The writer on the streaming side ain't getting no residuals. So if they get a residual, it may be $10, $25, if that. A lot of them aren't getting residuals at all. So that writer had that $100,000 has to try to stretch it out for 2 years or maybe even longer. That's what they're fighting for. Because at the end of the day, this is a billion-dollar industry, and you have a lot of writers who are working on the streaming side who can't even pay their rent or pay for their gas. And that's a big issue. Because again, while they're not being able to pay for certain things and they're writing these scripts, the profits are still going up. Again, this is a billion-dollar industry, okay? That's why they're fighting. It's really about the streaming, amongst other things, but it's the streaming the streaming has shifted this industry to where it is not working out in the favor of the people who are creating the entertainment, the writers. Before, and it's interesting enough that writers are the foundation. Without them, you have nothing. But they're, compared to other people, they get the least respect. Even though without them, you don't have a production, you don't add a director, you don't add actors without the writer first. But writers are the least respected. But the problem is that at this point, the streaming world isn't just affecting the writers. The Directors Guild and SAG and Teamsters and so many other unions are in alliance with the WGA this time around. And I don't think this has happened before. And if you know for a fact that it has, please leave your comments below. Again, this is just based on the research that I have seen. And some of this is also mixed in with my opinion as well, but just based on the research that I have seen, I have not seen this much of a united front. And that's what's really scary, because I want to say maybe a couple of unions were in alliance with the Writers Guild the last time around, but I haven't seen it to this magnitude how many are standing behind the WGA, so much that they're telling their union members on their end, do not cross the picket line. We're standing with the WGA. So that tells me these other unions are also fed up on the streaming side. Okay. So yeah, it's deep. And the thing is, what does this mean for our shows? Well, the good news is for shows that constantly stay in the writer's room, like I know for a fact Power, I think, is one of them. Most of the time when we are looking at a season of Power, they are either already in a writer's room while it's airing, or they just finished writing and they're already in production for that next season. Raising Kanan was one of those. I think when we saw the last season of Raising Kanan, they were already posting about how they were already in production for season 3. So for shows like that who stayed ahead of the game, they're probably in post-production now, and we're more than likely going to see that show and shows who did that, even though there's a strike, because it's not like they need the writers right now. The writers were already done writing before the strike happened. Where you're going to see an issue is the first place you're going to see an issue is late night shows. As soon as the strike happened, all of the writers from the late night shows left. And the thing with late night shows are they always have their writers there because they always, write about the trending topics and what's going on in the world. So they're already done. If you notice, if you guys watch late night shows, they're probably actually doing reruns right now because they don't have their writers. And then the other ones that are going to be affected are shows who are on hiatus. Like, you have shows that we absolutely love. Like, of course, I review Yellow Jackets. Abbott Elementary is a great show as well. We have a lot of shows that we love that more than likely their writers were on break. While their current season is airing, the writers were probably on break. Well, now that a strike has happened, until that strike is done, their writers can't go back into the writer's room, which means that will literally push production back. So when we typically see new seasons in the fall, or new seasons, whenever they're supposed to be, we may not see them, because without the writers, they can't go into production. Okay? So this is what's actually going on right now. You want my personal opinion? I've always been pro-union because I'm pro-people and I'm about the workers. So based on my research, yeah, I can see why at this point enough is enough. Because you're in a billion-dollar industry and you can't pay your rent. But yeah, you're supposed to be proud, and I'm sure they're still proud of seeing their names on the screen saying written by, but you're possibly eating oodles and noodles and can barely make ends meet. And how is that fair? You know what I mean? So now, to play devil's advocate, because that's the Libra in me, I'm about the scales, honey. I know that on the business side, what people are trying to say is the streaming side and broadcast side are not the same, because on the broadcast side, you have ad revenue. All of these commercials and things like that, they are paying for those slots, thus creating more revenue, thus the reason why they can pay their writers more. However, our premium cable channels, they don't have ads, and yet they never had an issue or you heard complaints about people getting paid when it came to premium cable. So I think that's what their argument is that, and especially because their revenue comes from the people who actually subscribe to them, the people who pay for, those apps. So their whole thing is, look, at the end of the day, you may not get the ads, but you have millions of people subscribe to your channel who pay this monthly benefit. There should be a way for us to come to a middle ground on making sure that writers are taken care of. And I agree. I mean, at the end of the day, I agree. Especially when there is a picture going around right now that they are saying that all of the CEOs of these studios, I think a total combined, they said they made close to like $700 million. And that was like all of their salaries combined, I think in 1 year, if I'm not mistaken. So if that's their salaries combined in 1 year, can you imagine what the profits are like? So this is why the strike is going down. Okay, essentially that's what's happening. Will we possibly suffer if they don't come to an agreement soon? Will we possibly suffer, and it's going to push back our favorite shows and maybe some movies that we were anticipating? Possibly. But that's what unions are for, to protect the people. So, but again, you may not agree with that. You may think this is a waste of time. I don't know. But again, I have no problem hearing different perspectives. Just be respectful and have a point to what you're saying. Just don't say it to complain. Let's have healthy dialogue and let's have a discussion. You know what I mean? So like, share, and subscribe. I hope that I explained this well. If not, you can let me know that too, and I'll try to explain it to you in the comments. But let me know how you feel, and I will see you on my next video. Peace.